Whether it's the bite, the fight, the fish, or the people we chase them with, fishing is an amazing way to connect to what really matters. From the beginner to the experienced angler, there's always more to do, explore, or try in fishing. This is a chance to discuss and celebrate all of it. This is the Love of Fishing podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Love of Fishing podcast. I'm your host, Lyle Gator. This episode is actually bonus content from our interview earlier in the week with Dan Favato. If you haven't checked that out already, please head over. I'll link it in the description. But as we continue our conversation, Dan talks about his adventures to Guyana and also about his perspective on fishing here in southern Ontario. I hope you enjoy the episode, and thanks again for tuning in. While there won't be a giveaway for this episode, as it's a continuation, every Wednesday when a new episode is released, you have a chance to win that week's great giveaway. Thanks to our generous sponsors for making this happen. Don't forget, it's simple to enter to win each week's giveaway. All you need to do is subscribe to my channel and comment on that week's video. That's it. You need to do both of these things in order to qualify. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Dan.
Right? And then you land and you're just like, oh my God. And then you get to the jungle and you're in there. And then you get to your first night and then it's like the first steep drop and you're just like, that wasn't that bad. It was actually really exciting. And then you go fish and you're like, holy cow, like this was a lot, more doable than I thought.
Right.
I mean, it's a different kind of living. You are really immersed in the jungle. But I mean, if you're any sort of outdoorsy, you totally feel engaged as soon as you get there, and you're kind of like your instincts start kicking in, and you start moving away around the way you dream of living. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be that outdoorsy, like self-sustained, like
almost hunter-gatherer, right? Like
essentially.
I mean, there's no stove and frying pan out there.
No, like the natives that we were guided by, they would go out, so we would fish all day. I mean, this wasn't every night, but I mean, this was every couple of nights. They'd go out with their literal bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And they also had a shotgun as well. But I mean, they would go out and hunt. There was jungle deer, tapir. What are the other animals? I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of like jungle animals that are like amazing eating. And we got to eat. I literally ate everything. I mean, there's things that I don't necessarily want to talk about that I ate. But I mean, we didn't eat human, so that's a good start.
that's a great start, yeah.
But I mean, the range of things that we had the pleasure of eating was once in a lifetime, and I never thought that I would be able to say that I got to eat this or that or stuff. Definitely my top trip.
Yeah, we've talked about that trip a few times before, and I know that's one that you did recently before COVID hit. You were just finishing up last year, and we'd gone ice fishing together before you were going, and I knew you were nervous. I know you, and it's really cool like to hear your perspective now, having done it and like gotten back, and you can appreciate what that trip meant for you, and I think that's super cool.
Yeah, man. It was, you definitely saw me right before.
Danny's shaking a little bit here, but he's going to be okay.
Well, I might die. I think I might die.
It's literally what you said. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about dealing with the hot weather and the humidity. What's the hardest thing about what you do? Maybe it's taking care of gear. Maybe it's something else.
The hardest thing that I do is staying focused and keeping organized, especially on trips like that where there's not a daily offload. I mean, you go out and you shoot for 12 days straight with no computer, right? I mean, it would be a bad idea to bring the computer out there anyways. And so it's that I think the most difficult part, and on any shoot really, is just staying organized and keeping track of the footage that you offload. I mean, I've gotten back on some shoots. And I mean, you're not doing a whole lot. Sometimes you're just on like a panga or something, and that's like a saltwater flats boat. And, you're just so heat beaten that you get back after the day and you have like one beer and you're just like, I don't feel comfortable even touching anything on the computer right now. I'm just so exhausted. I'm gonna mess something up
Yeah.
in terms of offloading, or I'm gonna miss a file. So it's literally happened to me where I thought I offloaded every single file, and then I go back and I'm like, I'm missing one file, or I'm missing two files. Like, how is this even humanly possible? And it's like, I have a feeling, and I still think about it all the time. I must have gone back to watch it and then like clicked on it, watched it, and then maybe it was selected and I pressed delete after,
Oh,
like, something silly like that. But like, who knows, right?
yeah.
But I mean,
You're fried at the end of the day, though.
oh, you're cooked. Like, I've literally been like, I've literally gotten heat stroke after like the first and second day too, which is like, I though in those states, I'm just like, I'm not touching or doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely just staying organized and making sure that all my files, um, get transferred and offloaded to a hard drive properly and safely.
That's really cool, man. Like that's a sign that you're dialed in on that. Anyone who's picked up a GoPro and thought that they were going to be a top-notch content creator probably doesn't understand that that's what goes into it.
Yes, yes, it's a workflow, and it's you got to respect the beast and the
Mhm.
GoPros and the files and all the cameras, and those are all the beasts that you have to respect, because at any given time you could make just a slight error and it can cost you, and especially when a client's kind of looking at you like, what happened?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I was supposed to be a professional, but I'm actually amateur. So,
Sorry, your shot's gone.
how do you feel about reshooting that? Is it only going to cost you another 5 grand? Okay, set her back. So it's yeah, you definitely have to be tedious with the files and offloading and making sure that everything gets backed up in the right way, so
Hmm.
that you don't go losing stuff.
That's cool, man. What is something that maybe you appreciate more now about fishing than ever before? And that could be either COVID related or just where you're at right now as an angler.
Um, I mean, COVID has allowed me to, in terms of fishing, I mean, obviously a lot of people have been staying home and everyone sees it differently, but I've definitely found that fisheries have been a little bit more untouched because of it. There's not nearly as much travel outside of, towns and cities.
Hmm.
And it left the fisheries that I grew up fishing a little bit more engaging, a little bit more active. In my opinion, anyways, I don't know, maybe I've just gotten better. Every year you get better at angling, but I mean, this year in specific, from the start of the pandemic till now, and moving forward, hopefully, I've just had, pretty spectacular fishing. And I feel like a part of that is because there's not nearly as much tourism and traffic on the systems and lakes and rivers. Um, so I think that's a big thing for me. And then as well, I would say, spending so much time behind the camera and trying to create content around, my passions and fishing and all that. It's when I go out and I personal fish, it is that much more special. When I go out and I say I'm not going to touch a camera,
Hmm.
it's painful, because I'm like, I'm probably going to go out and I'm probably going to do well, and I
Yes.
probably should have a camera. But those moments where you're just like, you're there, you're with your buddies, or you're with yourself, and you're just able to enjoy it for what it's worth, with no cameras, no electronics, you're just there. I think those have become way more special for me. And like I said, it's really hard to kind of step away from the camera, because that's a big part of who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so special when you can just go out and you're like, oh my God, I need to get this. Oh, wait, I don't have a camera. Okay, let me just finish.
Yeah.
And then you go out and you're just focused on that. You're just focused on, spending time outside and trying to catch your fish and doing your thing.
It's awesome, man. I applaud you for being able to do that because I know how passionate you are about picking up the camera and capturing that. So the ability to be able to put it down and take time for yourself, it's so key. So key. We talked a little bit before about your experiences out west and what you saw from people in general, how they live, what their outlook is. Also about some of the rules and how that fishery's managed. Is there some way that you think things could be better explored or improved on here in Ontario?
So I have a feeling I know I remember the conversation in regards to this. We
Hmm.
had kind of chatted about it, and a huge thing that I thought was really interesting. And again, I don't know if Ontario is the right space for it. It might be worth trying it on some systems as kind of like a trial process. But what I'm speaking about is it's this concept called rod days. Specifically, rod days was the biggest thing that I noticed at West. And I mean, you go to some of these places, like you go to Fernie, BC, as an example, and you can't fish any of those rivers without obviously getting your respective BC license, whether it's a day, a year, a week, or whatever it is.
Sure.
But then as well, on certain systems, there are certain river systems where you literally can't fish that system without a guide or purchasing a rod day through a lottery online. I don't know if lottery is the right word, but it's like a lottery. So I think it's like January 1st or whatever day it is.
Hmm.
Early in the beginning of the year, they open up at like 12:01 midnight. They open up this like lottery. I don't know if lottery is the right word, but like they open up the bidding to
Yep.
be able to get X amount of rod days, and there's only so many rod days that are available on that system. So let's say there's like 100 raw days, and 60% of them, 60 of those raw days are actually bought out, and you're grandfathered in by guiding companies, right? So it
Yeah.
ends up being that you've only got 40 legitimate raw days left to the public. And then after that, I think it's only the locals. I think as a local resident, BC resident, you can fish it without a raw day, but
Okay.
anything outside of the province, you have to, you know what I mean? So it's kind of exclusive to the residents of the province.
Yeah.
And I feel like that might be an interesting try for some of the more heavily pressured systems, especially, given some of the systems closer to Quebec. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's it would be an interesting trial to have on certain systems in Ontario that receive a lot of pressure because we have sustainable fisheries, yes.
Yes.
But I mean, we've watched certain fisheries, grow and some fisheries decline, and it's
Hmm.
maybe these kinds of implementations might help sustain better. And it, again, it's these are that's funding that goes back towards our fishery, right? The M&R and all of, I don't know what the whole circle is, but
Yep.
it's money that goes back into our fishery. Because if you think about it, I mean, what's a sporting license for a year is like $25.
I think it's around 25 or 30 because I know the 3 years is about 90.
Yeah. So I mean, you think about that. Don't quote me on it. I'm pretty sure the BC year-long license for all, like you can buy all classified waters.
Yep.
Like there's like classified water systems out there. For 1 year in BC, it's $100, right? And meanwhile, we've got all these, heavily stocked and maintained fisheries out our ways that don't even self-sustain like they do on the West Coast.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like $30 a year, right? So
Right.
I feel like we are as a fishery, it would make more sense to either have classified waters where you have to pay for raw days, or you have to sign up, or you have to pay for an extra tab to be able to fish all of the systems, right? So you've got your
Yeah.
basic fisheries, like let's, as an example, your license is good for the mains, right? You've got Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and Lake Simcoe or something like that, and
Hmm.
then maybe a couple of cottage lakes. But then when you start talking about the like the river systems, I don't know how you
Well,
put it.
some of the smaller ponds and lakes, near urban centers.
Yeah, like something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's, you can buy an extra classified classified license
Yep.
for um for those systems, and it's like you can either buy them as a group, or if you just fish one specific system, you can buy the one specifically. It's like 5-10 bucks, or X amount.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be a good trial to have because again, it's it helps our anglers engage with what our fisheries are. It makes them think a little bit more because when you go out and you spend $30 on a license and just, oh, okay, let's go do it. You
Right.
know, everybody and their uncle is going to go to, the Bowmanville and just go, floss across a couple of salmon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why those fisheries get so abused. I mean, don't get me wrong, out west, I've seen it too now, through talking with the locals out west. They get that kind of abuse too on the bigger systems and smaller systems, but it's not to the same extent. You won't just get them. You won't get stuff like that on the, classified northern systems, the systems that aren't so easy to access.
Hmm.
Because you can't just go to any river system. You have to make sure that it's not classified and this and that. Because if you get dinged, it's big ticketing. If you're on a system and you don't have like your classified waters license,
Yep.
huge ticket. So I believe having those kinds of parameters would help our Ontario residents that do purchase licenses, would help them think a little bit more and understand our fishery a bit better.
I think that's a cool idea for sure. Like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and what you've seen out west, that's an interesting way to handle it. I know out east, a lot of those rivers you have to fish with a guide,
Yep.
or unless you're local. So it's the same sort of management, and I'm hoping I'll have other people on the show that are maybe more involved at the policy end, and maybe
Yeah.
I'll throw these kinds of ideas out to them and see if that's on the table. I think the dynamics right now of what you're seeing with more people staying local and fishing their local waters definitely has the potential to make them more crowded. At the same time, you and I both understand that growing the sport is important. And, for this podcast, that's what I hope to do. I hope to get people involved or more involved. So it's a fine line between saying, guys, here it is, come enjoy it, and also, protecting it for the quality.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the biggest thing is just education and awareness of how our fishery works and proper ethics on the rivers and lakes, right? I mean, it doesn't just we're not just isolated to one system. It's all ranges of fisheries and being able to share that kind of knowledge with people that might not be as educated or as experienced, I guess I would say, as experienced on the waters is going to help. It's going to, a lot less confrontations on the riversides and on the lakes. So I think that's a huge play. Yeah, for sure.
Dan, that's all the questions I have. I want to thank you very much for joining the Love of Fishing podcast this week. If people want to follow you and find out what kind of adventures you're on, how can they do that?
Yeah. So my Instagram would be at Fly Inspired, and my YouTube channel is Dan the Fisher.
And of course, I'd like to thank Dan very much for taking his time out of his very busy schedule to join the Love of Fishing podcast. Dan, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me, Ryan. I do appreciate it, man.
I'd like to thank Dan once again for his time on Love of Fishing podcast, sharing his experiences. And man, I got to tell you, he is one interesting cat. The things that he does with the camera and what he gets to do for his job is truly incredible. And I hope you enjoyed hearing his perspective on some of the things that he's done. That concludes this week's episode. We'll be back on Wednesday with a new episode talking to Nick Foxcroft from the Silver Salmon Challenge. You're not going to want to miss that one. There's a big giveaway coming up, and I'm very, very excited to bring that to you. Guys, as always, hook sets are free. Get outside and go fishing. Peace.